Hello? Hello? Look, who is this?
Stop. Oh, God.
What do you want? Why are you doing this?
Filthy Billy! I know you're there, nasty Billy! You're answering Billy!
Who are you? For God's sake, what are you doing?
I know what you did, Billy! Filthy Billy! 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 Billy!
Stop this!
That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
No. Be afraid. Be very afraid.
There is nothing to fear except God. Whatever that means to you.
Do I look like someone who cares what God thinks?
Why do I say this? Because we got Holy Ghost power!
You're listening to The Fear of God, a podcast exploring the intersection between Christianity and the horror genre.
Hello, or should I say, ho. Welcome back to The Fear of God. We are so glad you're here. Well, I'm so glad you're here. I think my co-host will be glad you're here, but I'm getting ahead of myself a bit. This is, I wish I'd gotten a little jingle bell so I could make a little noise here. This is Nathan Rouse, one of your co-hosts on The Fear of God, and I'm so happy to be in your ears right now because it is December. It is the Christmas season, which is like the perfect time of year for horror movies. It's always a perfect time of year for horror movies. But yes, this is Nathan. It is Christmas. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa. Happy holidays. We can say that. We can say it all. Typically with me is fellow co-host Reed Lackey. He was here a minute ago. He was feeling the Christmas spirit, though, you guys, and he said something about needing to go get his sherry out of the toilet, which is, I guess there are worse hiding places, maybe? He does have a young child, so I do, you want to be sensitive. We don't want to parade our liberties in front of our children, per se, but nonetheless, kind of an odd spot. But it's Reed, he's an odd guy. So we kind of roll with it while we wait on him to get back. Hopefully still intelligible, unlike yours truly at the moment. I did want to encourage you. 'Tis the season for gift giving. We'd love if you'd give a gift of yours to Fear of God, that being a, let me clarify, 5-star rating or review. Rating or review. We do so enjoy those. They make us happy, and it's good to be happy. We are starting a new series this month. It is a Christmas themed series. We are calling it What the Dickens, because you know what? I would tell you why we're calling it that, but this is a really special one to read. So I'm going to, Reed? Hey buddy, are you
Hi.
you okay?
How you doing? I'm so happy to be here. I want to let you know, I'm so excited to talk about.
Yeah,
talk
welcome
about
to the
this
party,
movie.
buddy.
Thank you. What party? What?
We just started.
Did we
just
really?
started.
Really?
Yeah.
Hang on, I'll be right back.
Okay.
What?
Y'all, he fell asleep.
What?
He fell asleep in the corner.
What'd I miss?
Oh,
Huh?
so much. You missed Thanksgiving? You missed the birds? Because, I don't know, you were not present.
Oh,
for that
I missed
episode,
the-
that's for sure.
I missed the birds. I missed.
All right, buddy.
Okay.
Slap some water on the face. Slap some water on the face.
Time to. All right. Snapping the fingers, jiggling off.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, I just want to call out and praise publicly. I praised you privately for it, but I want to praise publicly your social media posting skills. In my opinion, are next level. They are super caliber. I will not
you.
forget that I was just having my lunch break, just eating my lunch, sitting at my desk, and all of a sudden I get a text from you saying, "I'm so dumb," and I'm like, "What just happened?" And so I pull up the Fear of God
You were
Facebook
worried.
page.
You were worried it was like a nihilistic thing, right? Yeah. You were like,
Right.
uh-oh, existential.
Right. So I pulled up the Fear of God Facebook page to find that your posting for the episode The Birds consisted entirely of things like bark, 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 squeak, 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 bark, bark, bark. That was the entire thing.
Intercut with our Twitter handles and hashtags enumerating The Legend of Zelda, Alfred Hitchcock, The Birds, and the never to be replicated in its deep cutterism Hitch box giving.
Oh my gosh, that was absolutely hysterical. So yeah, I don't know, like I really
we don't pay that Rathan Nouse enough for his social media. That he's our new staff member for 2019.
Our producer Lead Racky and our social media guru Rathan Nouse. So yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's awesome.
It's funny how that worked out.
It's true. I know. Who'da thunk? Who'da thunk it?
Hey Reed, welcome
buddy.
to the show, buddy. Welcome to December.
I
it's
know.
December.
Okay, so I can't believe that it's already December of 2018. Like my head is spinning. We're about to say goodbye to another year. I mean, it feels like the time is just growing shorter and shorter and shorter. And I don't know. I don't know exactly how I feel about that. That's probably just because we're getting older. But
yeah, and what was a good feeling just evaporated with the recognition of age. Will you please pass me the sherry?
Exactly. Okay. So
but I was going to tell I was beginning the process of telling them about this series, but I thought this is your baby.
Yes.
I want you to articulate this series, and it matters that we're telling them now because it does have a little homework attached if they decide to participate.
Sure. So do you want me to tell every major beat of the series or just the conclusion and source?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we are entering it. It's December. We last year we did Scary Burton Christmas, which was a ton of fun. And we wanted to do something a little different and somewhat special this time around. And as some of the listeners may know, or as I may have mentioned specifically, my favorite book ever written by anybody is Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And being that it is a proper Christmas story, but also a proper ghost story, we wanted to feature it here at The Fear of God. So we are building up our special Christmas episode, the last episode of December. It'll actually air, I think, a little post-Christmas, but our special holiday episode is going to be on Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Now, I want to be very clear about this because what Nathan mentioned about the homework is this is up to you. There is a bit of homework attached in that we are not covering, although we may reference one or two of them here or there, we are not covering a specific film adaptation of the story. We are covering the book. The book is very brief. It is easily accessible in the public domain. Find a copy, read it this December, and join us for a conversation specifically about the text of A Christmas Carol at the end of this month. And as a result, we decided to do a whole series about it because we love series here at The Fear of God. So we decided to look at horror movies in the spirit of the Dickens Christmas Carol. We wanted to look at Christmas horror past, Christmas horror present, and Christmas horror future. Of course, fudging them slightly with our given parameters. But we are going to be looking at a film from the past, a film that is a little bit more recent, and a film that, as we deem it in the Christmas horror future, is somewhat time nebulous. So today we are going to be covering, which we'll talk about in a little bit, 1973's Black Christmas, directed by Bob Clark. Next week, if you're catching up on this, seek out the film directed by Chris Peckover called Better Watch Out. And then the week following that, right before our conclusion of the series, we are going to be finally covering the 2015 Krampus. I know that there's a number of films that are titled Krampus, many of them from like knockoff places. We are specifically covering the one that stars Toni Collette, and it was directed by...
I didn't know Toni Collette was in that.
Yeah, she's actually one of the she's actually the main one, like the main mother. But so starring Toni Collette and Adam Scott, and directed by Michael Daugherty. So seek out those 3 films and then join us for Dickens: A Christmas Carol at the end. I'm very excited about these. This is a really, really fun series. Hopefully people will enjoy it. I'm sure we're going to have a great time. And so we've dubbed it. This is Nathan Rouse's particular special, unique talent and contribution. We have dubbed it #WhatTheDickens, and so that's for this December. That's what we're gonna be doing. What the Dickens includes Christmas horror, past, present, and future, culminating in the coup de grace, the Charles Dickens: A Christmas Carol. So thanks for letting me share with them all of that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it was fun.
If I can do some quick shameless self promotion,
please do.
I did not alert you to this, and I didn't know I was going to do it, but I've referenced this a couple times. This is our 3rd Christmas read. This is our 3rd.
Oh my gosh, that's right. That is unreal.
I feel like I've referenced this on the show before, but it's always too late. Like I always think about it after the fact. But this will time out well. If you live anywhere in the Charlotte region,
yes.
defined as definable as flexibly defined as you'd like that to be. I often reference on here theater and whatnot. I actually do that occasionally. So I do produce a play. It's called The Birth, BIRTH. This will be its 13th year here in Charlotte. You can find tickets at thebirth.net and follow the links there to find your tickets. It's a lovely little piece of theater. It's spoiler alert for some of you. It's just about an hour long. So, if in fact you do take an interest in checking out the play, 1, thank you. That means a lot. But 2, as you consider that and possibly make plans, just know it's about an hour, so that you can sort of plan accordingly. Regardless, I'm really proud of it. It's a passion work, clearly having done so for 13 years now, and would love to see some of you at that. But regardless, thank you, Reed. I appreciate the opportunity to shamelessly.
Of course. Oh, no. I would love that. I feel honored that I was there from the actual conceptual inception of The Birth, and have been very proud and feel very pleased to watch it develop into what it is. And
the actual conceptual inception of the conception.
Yes.
Of Jesus play. Yes.
Yes. There's all kinds of conceiving going on. There's just tons.
Wow. Yeah.
But
only one of them immaculate, brother.
I don't know. I think your performance.
Unless you count Anakin Skywalker.
I think your performances are probably pretty immaculate. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
I'm not kidding about that, but yes, that's,
Yeah, I sort of got what you were trying to say.
You get me. You get me. So yeah, here we are, buddy. This is really fun. This is really exciting. We're going to be talking about a film that I'm excited to hear your thoughts on, that I've been excited to talk about in the show for a long time. But before we do that,
what is there to be done?
I gotta ask you a question.
Yeah?
Yeah. I gotta ask you.
Are you
Nathan Rouse
trying to
yes.
get a tune?
So tell me what you watching and what you reading and what you listening to.
Boom, boom, boom.
So tell me what you watching and what you reading and what you listening to. What you reading and listening.
What's so funny is, I can see your face on the screen right now, and while you were prepping that question, you had the look of someone vigorously working their brain to try to find a tune immediately and in the moment so that they can accomplish an extemporaneous bit of comedy.
Well, and there was an extra layer to it because I was also trying to remember what we did last year so that I did not repeat that.
Oh, wow.
And so I was like, oh, yeah, what did we do last year? Okay, all right, I think we did this. All right, I'll do this instead. There we go.
What did you come to? What do you recall?
I think last year I did what you watching, what you reading, what you listening to.
Yeah, but okay, wow. All right.
I think.
Sure,
what? Maybe not.
That seems right. Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. Regardless, here we are.
Merry Christmas, everybody. I really have not
This-
been into the toilet sherry. I'm just letting you know. That was purely a fabrication for the. I'm sitting here with my cherry Dr. Pepper, and so
Yeah,
yes.
whatever. You big lush. So I've got two. What you want to do?
Well, it's funny. I've got two as well. Why don't you? Okay, I asked you, so why don't you go first, and then
Okay,
we'll bounce back
I'll
and
lead.
forth.
I will start, and then we'll bounce.
Okay.
Peace. So it is difficult to find material my wife and I will enjoy together these days. Purely because as my fear of God consumption has increased over the last 2 years, it has sort of spilled out into other. Whereas used to, I might watch a scary movie or whatever for the fear of God. Now I'm like, I'm going to watch a scary movie for the fear of God, and I'm also watching Channel Zero or whatever. There's a lot more like scary content, and so she gets kind of crowded out because she's like, I'm not doing that. So it's kind of hard to find these days time and inclination and interest and quality that we both can kind of dive into. But we did just start watching season 1 of Amazon's The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Have you checked this out?
I have. I've seen all of season 1. I haven't seen season 2 yet.
Okay.
But yeah, I've seen all of season 1. Yeah.
We have not talked about that.
No.
So we are about 4 in
Ah.
and are just really, really enjoying
it's a great
it.
show.
It is just a
wonderful show.
lovely, zany, whimsical bit of period comedy. And I really dig it.
I appreciate how it resists going too heavy, even though it's dealing with some subjects that it could easily tip in that direction. But you mentioned whimsy, and it is pretty amazing, like how digestible the series is. It's very rewarding. I think a lot of that is Rachel Brosnahan's performance. She's phenomenal in it. She won some award. I can't remember precisely what she won. It's escaping me at the moment. I just didn't expect to discuss it, so I didn't look it up. But she won an award as best, maybe a Golden Globe or something. I can't remember, but she's received.
Well,
accolades.
interestingly, this was accidental, but you can edit that out and it'll sound intentional. But really, you can leave it in. I don't care. Season 2 releases December 5th, I believe, which is going to time out roughly to when this airs.
Nice. Okay, yeah. So there's no way for me to have possibly seen season 2 yet. I had just seen a bunch of ads for it, but haven't, I thought that it was just downloaded and I hadn't started it yet.
Nope, it is not officially released yet.
Nice.
But I mean, goodness gracious, there some of the comedic beats. Again, we're only about 4 in, but
sure.
It's spoiler alert, but the series starts this way, so it's not like that big a spoiler. The show kind of centers on this actor that Reed just referenced, Rachel Brosnahan's character's husband leaving her.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's set in like 1950s, and it's a Jewish family, and so there's a lot of cultural elements to the show. Well, she goes to tell her parents about this, and I don't know if you remember this. The mom goes into a bedroom to cry and is wailing in the background, and Tony Shalhoub, who plays her dad, just to a pitch perfect.
He's wonderful. He's wonderful.
He shouts down the hall something like, "Don't cry in that bedroom." And then in the back, they don't draw attention to it at all. In the background, you see her exit that bedroom crying and enter another bedroom and slam the door. It's just great. Great little comedic flourishes like
it's
that.
Wonderful.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. But yeah, so everybody should check out The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel because it's really wonderful. Well, the one that I have, and I hope I'm not stealing your second one here, but the one that I have is I can finally talk about it now because we have it's been released officially, and I can give a wholehearted endorsement for everybody to go see it, and that is Wreck-It Ralph 2: Ralph Breaks the Internet. I wanted to mention of this show about this movie because it would be easy for some people to just sort of dismiss it as, oh, that's just a kid's movie, even if they enjoyed the first one. But this is a really fantastic.
I don't think that's our audience, though.
No, that's a good point. No, that's a good point. Yeah, if you're on the fence about seeing it, wondering whether or not the sequel is going to be great, go see it because it's fantastic. It's one of the best sequels that Disney proper has ever released. It is absolutely amazing.
It's startlingly deep too.
Oh, it really is.
Like
yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, even the first one, Ralph's journey that culminates in that kind of monologue as he's plummeting back to the ground, whatever that sort of landscape is.
Yeah.
At the end of the first one is very powerful, and then this one, you and I were chatting just today, in fact, and just the depth they plumb to examine the what it's really like to be in a dynamic relationship with another person. You know,
Yeah.
The friendship component of it. Like I can't remember a movie that's so nimbly dealt with the ins and outs of a real relationship.
Oh,
It was really
absolutely.
powerful.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think it's absolutely fantastic. So, yes, definitely go check out Ralph Breaks the Internet. It is well worth your time. It is hysterical. It is vibrant. It's fun. But as we've already discussed, it's also surprisingly mature in its themes. That's not to say that it's, specifically inappropriate for children, but just it's got a lot of maturity to the way it handles certain themes. And I think it will probably make you cry and think, and it's really well executed. Stay till the end.
Make you cry.
Yeah, I'm not crying. You're crying. Stay till the end of the credits, though. The very end of the credits. I think it's quite worth it. It's very, very fun. Something special surprise.
No, I did enjoy Ralph Breaking the Internet, and I kind of wish he would. Really.
True.
My only other one is a bit more serious, but I've referenced it a couple of times, I think, on here. I have been just really digging into and listening to a lot of the podcast Why Is This Happening with Chris Hayes, and he's an MSNBC personality. And it's a really great podcast. And why it's great is not just quality material, but each episode though the topics tend to originate from the moment we're in, the point of the episodes are more about, hey, let's not just examine the moment. Let's say, okay, we're talking about this thing. Let's examine the history of that thing. So for instance, ones I would recommend immediately would be he just did a live Q&A with Ta-Nehisi Coates like a week ago. That was great. Yeah. Did you end up listening to it?
I haven't listened to it yet, but you sent it to me as a special thing, and I
it's great.
Yeah.
And as a little sidebar, one reason that was great is, I don't know if you know this, but Coates left Twitter about a year ago, and he just talks about that, and it's really kind of powerful and challenging, and I don't know, just I like him as a personality anyway, and so that was a really good conversation. Believe it or not, there is an episode from a week or two ago on the census that is enlightening and eye-opening and fascinating.
Wow.
Yeah, and remarkably compelling, and you would be astonished to know how much of our society hinges on the information of the census.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that one's really great. And the last one I'll reference, the title of it is Slavery's Enduring Political Legacy. Is just, there was an article I read, and this is going to be, I recognize just how massive the implications of the comment I'm about to make are, and also recognize I'm not going to unpack them at all. But in one day, I read an article that was about climate change from the standpoint of, it was about the fires, which were in your neck of the woods, and literally, and it was discussing things as minuscule as the bugs that are in the trees and how those are relevant to the changing climate.
Wow.
So you have something that minuscule. So I read that article, and you read that sort of stuff, and it's about how one of the reasons the fires were happening is because the temperature doesn't get quite low enough as it did, and thus dew is not able to collect on the ground, and thus you've got drier brush, blah, blah, blah.
Oh,
so you read that article that's all about these tiny elements that have massive effect in the broad scope of things. So I read that article. Well, then I listened to this Slavery's Enduring Political Legacy interview, and read, one, you should just go listen to it. But two, his guests, again, there's so much that could be unpacked here, basically lay out the thesis and have written a book that they unpack with startling clarity, how where ancient geography, where tectonic plates collected or collided, determines where soil was fit to grow cotton, which determines where certain demographics collect in the country, determines how those areas vote.
Oh my gosh.
So in one day, I read this article about climate change and tiny bugs affecting being sort of effectors of massive weather patterns and climate disruption. And then in the same day, I listened to this podcast about how soil of hundreds of years ago is affecting electoral outcomes today.
That is
It was
nuts.
insane.
That sounds absolutely fascinating. That's incredible.
And it will make you buy into predestination, which I don't really. But it was just this weird moment of like, oh my God, it's all connected.
It sounds a little bit like the inheritor, although I think this podcast is still around, of Freakonomics back in the day, where it would examine similar sort of like connections of things.
Sure. I mean, Freakonomics is still around,
Yeah.
and I imagine this particular episode of his podcast would be similar to a Freakonomics type episode. But that was just a real specific one. They were talking about the enduring sort of slavery kind of ideas. But anyway, so why is this happening with Chris Hayes? It's really good. You ought to check it out.
Awesome. Well, I just have one more little thing.
do it.
Man, oh man. So I went to see. It was hyped up quite a bit. I believe that you, as of now, have not seen it yet. So I am not going to say too much. But I went to see Creed 2. It's a pair of sequels for me. Wreck-It Ralph 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet, and then Creed 2. The listeners can't see that I just held up like a fist, like I'm about to box somebody, because it was. I really, really, really highly recommend Creed 2. To spare spoilers for my wonderful co-host, who I know wants to see it, but as of this recording has not yet. I do think that it did not reach the heights, although I don't know what else really could, the heights of that very first film, which was just absolutely magnificent on a whole other level. But it did definitely hit all of the same major beats, as my wife shakes her head at me because she's like, that's not acceptable to say that Creed 2 is not awesome and amazing. But it hit all of the same major beats in terms of like... In fact, if there's one thing that I will say, I think it suffers a little bit from that whole sequel syndrome, so you might be able to sort of intuit some of the narrative beats to where it's going. But I will say, and this is public knowledge, although I don't know if you have seen it, and this does not actually spoil anything of the plot of the film, except by omission. But Sylvester Stallone has officially announced that he's hanging up the Rocky gloves. He said, he's basically said, I'm not going to play Rocky Balboa anymore. So that's
well, it's funny you say that, because I don't know anything about the content of Creed, but I am pretty. If you want to see Creed, I haven't seen it, but this may be in spoiler territory for the next minute and a half or so. So I'm idly prattling on here for just a moment, so you can skip ahead. I did see a tweet that makes me think he doesn't pass away in this film, because basically the person was saying there's no way Sylvester Stallone is letting this character go without an actual on-screen passing.
Interesting.
Now, I will ask you this. I think one of the few hesitations I've had, other than just logistics of life, is a blip I did see intimated that it's almost as much a sequel to Rocky IV, I guess, is the one in question, as much as it is the first Creed. And I guess it gave me slight pause, because I know the just giant beats of that story,
Sure.
but I don't know the film well at all. And I wondered, would I feel a little like unconnected because of that?
I can speak to the fact that you miss nothing except for, okay, no, I'll say it this way. You don't miss anything from Rocky IV that the film does not catch you up to speed on. So,
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, having seen Rocky IV, it's hard to parse out exactly how much of my awareness of everything was connected directly to what the film was giving me, and how much of it was connected to the fact that I had seen Rocky IV. But yeah, I mean, I will say that if you're going into it being like, well, yeah, I saw the first Creed, but I've never seen Rocky IV, like, they catch you up. They bring you up to speed. There is one pretty big surprise in it that's actually not related. There's two major surprises in it, and I'm going to be very careful here. One of them is related to Rocky IV, but again, the film catches you up to it. The other one is related to a different film in the Rocky franchise and was completely non-telegraphed from anything else. So there are a couple of little surprises on character beat levels, but and I would go into more depth if you had actually seen it, but I want to encourage you to see it. So yes, go see.
I will
Creed
try
2.
to do that. I might not be able to do it by the time the next episode airs.
I understand, but that's okay.
You know.
That's all right. That's all right. So yeah.
I don't even know a song. I don't know.
Well,
I can't do it right now.
Well, just do it.
I can't do it. What you watching? What are you reading? What are you listening to?
Wow. Why are you gonna end things like that? Things were off to such a good start.
A very long start. In
True.
fact, I had another little bit, but I think I'll punt it to next week.
Ooh, okay.
It's fun. Reed, so you feel like doing this
Let's
thing?
do it. Let's go into this. So, as I always like to do when I am familiar with a film and you are not, I want to know just basically what were your expectations, if you had any, going into Black Christmas. I think I said earlier it was 1973. It's actually 1974. So what did you think going into it? Did you know anything about it? Had you heard about it? Had you seen any clips from it? Or was this a completely blind thing?
I had never heard of or knew that this film existed.
Interesting.
And,
okay.
You know, at this point, I should just give you more credit, but you just, in other ways, keep failing me, and so it's hard to measure all that out.
I have no idea where you're going, but I already don't like it.
I know. But no, sometimes, so I was building to how you propose movies sometimes of that if I've literally never heard of them, I'm like, you know, I mean, you're my buddy and I trust you, so I'm going to watch these movies. But there's just no context. And on the one hand, that's great because I like watching movies with very little context because I want to be kind of surprised by them. On the other hand, sometimes I'm not 100% sure, well, hey, is Reed's putting these on the list because he's endorsing them or just saying these qualify for what we're looking for? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
So you throw out, you know, Black Christmas and Next Week Better Watch Out, neither of which I was familiar with.
Sure.
And I'm just kind of like, okay, well, I'm going to search this in iTunes or if it's on Shudder or whatever, find it and just rent it or watch it and off you go.
Right.
I don't know when it's set. I don't know who's in it generally. With this one particularly, I don't know. With this one specifically, it was kind of interesting. My wife did hang out in the room, but I had my headphones on, so she wasn't like paying attention to it. And this is what's kind of interesting about this movie. So it is set in 74. I'm sorry, it's, you know, released in 74, so clearly set in the early 70s. And I don't know, like the first kind of 30 minutes, I wasn't sure how to receive it. You know what I mean?
Oh, sure.
It's a little wacky. Mrs. Mack. So, brief summary, it's set in a sorority house.
Yeah. Almost exclusively.
And effectively there's a sort of prank caller that makes these incredibly obscene phone calls, and all of the girls are a little unnerved by it. But there's a house mom. I mean, she's not a maternal, she's not a mother, but this older middle-aged woman who is kind of the buffoonish character, the jokester, jester type character of the piece. Well, she's so broad that you kind of don't know how to take some of this material itself. I haven't told you the story yet. So what's funny about this movie is, I can't remember if we watched it right before Thanksgiving or right after, but about an hour into the movie, I'll be honest, I was drifting a little bit, not sleepy, but just like,
yeah, sure.
I don't know. My wife was in the room. It was just a little distracted. Well, and to my credit, I am going to give myself credit here. I rarely to never these days will, unless I'm taking notes for the show, use my phone for any external purposes while watching a movie.
Sure.
I don't want to do it. I try to plug in. Well, my brain started thinking about Christmas presents because I'm watching Black Christmas. And I just got on Amazon and started doing some browsing while the movie's on, which is really insulting and offensive, and I'm owning it. However, where the story goes redeems it. Reed, like 5 minutes pass of just sort of, trying to do both things. this movie started freaking me the hell out, and I
Really?
started like
Oh,
getting
wow,
pulled. I started getting pulled back in,
Mm-hmm.
and so kind of those last 20-30 minutes, I was very much like not distracted anymore. I
Oh,
was
sure,
very,
sure. Yeah.
very plugged in. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty effective film, even if there's a little flabby middle there, which is just my easy distractibility as a 2018 year old.
Yeah, no.
2018 year old. Oh my gosh!
2008.
Wow, you handed me the sherry, and I just have not stopped.
Yes. Can we talk about the toilet sherry? Can we talk about how somebody would just keep that's the worst is I'm sitting here, I'm like, what is she about to pull out of that thing? There's this scene where this Mrs. Mack character, the sort of sorority mom that you mentioned, like goes into the basin of a toilet, not the primary basin, but like I don't know what you call it, the upper sort of tank, and pulls out
the tank
and pulls out this bottle of sherry. I'm like, that is
well,
disgusting.
but a little context is helpful there that she has hidden little bottles of alcohol all around the
that's
sorority
true.
house.
Yes, yeah, that's
and
true.
is pulling them out of these discreet places and badgering under her breath these girls who are in her care. She's a really terrible character.
She really
I mean,
is.
she's quite detestable
and is treated as such in the film. That is pretty interesting. So I have a few what I consider them interesting, few little trivia bits. So did you catch I don't know if his name means anything to you. Did you catch who directed this film? So
was it somebody Clark? I don't have
yes.
his first name in front of me.
So Bob Clark. Do you know what other movie Bob Clark directed, or probably his most famous movie that he directed?
Give me a little context.
It is
I can
another
guess it.
Christmas film.
Well, I mean, okay, it's really broad.
Give me a little.
I mean,
Okay,
I don't know.
it is one of the most famous Christmas films.
I don't know.
Wow,
Just tell
not
me.
even go take a guess.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you say one of the most famous Christmas films. What are you trying to, like, National Lampoon, like It's a Wonderful Life? What are we talking about? What ends of the
We are
spectrum
talking
are we
about we are talking about A Christmas Story. Ralphie,
Really?
you're gonna shoot. Yeah, that's why I'm like, no, one of the most famous Christmas films. Bob Clark directed A Christmas Story. The director of this film that you watched went on to direct A Christmas
Yeah, no,
Story.
I got it. You can.
The director
read.
of this. No, Bob. His first name's Bob. His last name's Clark. He has at least 2 IMDb credits. One of them is the film we're talking about today, and the other one is A Christmas Story.
That's funny.
Where
That
the guy
is
wants the Red
too
Ryder
funny.
BB gun with the it was great.
that one. That one. Oh, okay.
I
I
love how
thought you meant the other one. You know what's really funny? We are going all over the place. My she's a wonderful human. My mother-in-law, who's moved in with us years ago, we were at her house for at Christmas time, and of course, Christmas Story on TBS gets played 24 hours a day.
Sure does.
And we're there, and it's it's family Christmas. It's fine. It's a little awkward.
Sure.
And
sure.
it's on. There's a bunch of people you don't know. It's on, and my sweet mother-in-law, she's like, I remember that movie when it was in black and white.
What?
You know me, man. You know I can be a jackass in a heartbeat. It took so much to just not be like, whatever, you'd say so. But I was really like, what? No, you really don't remember that.
That is
because
so funny.
That's not a thing.
That's not a thing.
Regardless,
it never existed.
The 2 movies that Bob Clark directed were both in color.
They were.
I suppose. I
mean,
don't
he
know. Maybe
directed
he's got
more,
other
but-
movies.
Yeah,
okay.
no, he does. He directed more, and I've seen.
That'd be a hell of a
them.
career.
I know, right? I think one of the now I would need to look him up to confirm this, but I think one of the other one is this infamous like frat boy sort of pervy comedy called Porky's. I think that's another one that he directed. But I
Are you being silly? Like you've never heard of Porky's?
No.
I mean, I've
have
never
heard,
seen it, but
No. I have heard of Porky's, and I don't think I've ever seen it. I am
it's
relatively
like,
familiar with its content.
That's all, folks.
Wow. No, what I am unsure of, but have not. Wow, that's this is. I can't recover. Can't even recover from this. That's just ridiculous. No, what I was unsure of and what needed
that movie.
what I needed confirmation of was, did he direct it? And I just looked it up, and yes, he did.
Ah,
Yeah,
well, because the way you said it was, you were like, He directed this other movie about frat boys called Porky's, as though you'd never
No.
heard of it.
Porky's was I was well acquainted.
Oh,
with
you
it.
know that one.
Oh yeah. That's... Shut up. Oh my gosh. So this was Elvis's favorite Christmas
That's
movie.
all,
Well, actually,
folks.
it was Elvis's favorite.
What?
This was Elvis's favorite horror movie.
Are you just making stuff up now?
I'm not. Well, what's really funny though is
You're like
Elvis.
Bob Clark directed It's a Wonderful Life. He also might have directed Porky's. By the way, Elvis died watching this movie on the toilet with a banana sandwich.
A banana sandwich. What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Oh
I
my
don't know.
gosh! Oh my gosh! No, so
Send
so
help.
so sincerely, it was uncovered in my research for this film that Elvis Presley.
We're not getting any 5 stars for this episode.
This is where they're gonna have another negative rating. So so this was Elvis Presley's favorite horror movie.
Okay.
I mean, it was released in 1974, and he passed away in 1977. But it was a tradition in his house. Wow, in his household, it was a tradition to watch it every Christmas, and it even made a notation where it said, "Now his family keep the tradition alive, and they watch it in his memory because he was such a big fan of it." So it was actually Steve Martin. It was like one of his all-time favorite films too. In fact, Olivia Hussey, the star, so she's in this. She plays the character of Jess. I know her from one of my very favorite films. She played Mary, the mother of Jesus, in Jesus of Nazareth. But at the time, Steve Martin met her at some I think some casting call or something, and he said, "Hey, you were in one of my all-time favorite films," and she thought he was referring to Romeo and Juliet, but then he was like, no, it's like Black Christmas. I've seen that movie about 30 times. And so, yeah, I mean, it's very well, and I mention these things just to say, like, this is a film that is very highly regarded among people who have seen it or among people who, like, fans of the horror genre and stuff like that. Like, it is a very, very respected and highly regarded film. It's considered one of the first, if not the first, traditional slasher films. There's a handful of films that predate it, specifically Bay of Blood, Psycho, of course, even Peeping Tom. And then,
well, to asterisk your note there, I thought this is what you were about to say because this is what I read. It is one of the first slashers to leave the perpetrator unidentified.
Oh no, it definitely is that. Yeah, it definitely is.
Oh.
Yeah. No, it definitely.
Okay.
No. Listen, and did I tell you that Bob Clark directed? So
you didn't, but to that I would just want to say, thank you very much.
But no, sincerely.
Speaking of Olivia Hussey, did you know that she signed on to appear in the film after being told by her psychic that she would make a film in Canada and would earn a great deal of money?
I had heard that.
Whatever. You think you know everything. Oh,
I
let
knew
me guess
about
you talk
Elvis.
to your psychic. This is true.
So-
this is true.
But no, sincerely. So, and I'm sure you noticed. This is maybe more in likes dislikes, but not really trivia. This is just casting. But of course, Lois Lane is in it as well. This is one of the only other things I've ever seen Margot Kidder in. Margot Kidder pretty much exclusively resides as Lois Lane from the Christopher Reeve Superman films. But this is the only other. Honestly, it is the only other film that I can think of seeing her in, other than those Superman movies. It was Black Christmas and those. I have a couple of other notes here, but maybe we should move on to likes, dislikes, because we've already been super silly here. Oh, my gosh. I did want to mention, before passing on into the next section, I did want to mention that, so this one has some connections to Halloween. So Halloween is credited with popularizing and standardizing the slasher genre formula. And rightfully so, because it made a ton of money. This did not make a lot of money. This was actually received rather negatively, both critically and financially, at the time of its release, and only achieved its popular status over time. But John Carpenter's Halloween owes a great deal to this film. In fact, the original concept of Halloween was that it was going to be, in some ways, a direct sequel to Black Christmas. And of course, yes, and so, but then that idea relatively early in the process was almost completely abandoned. But there are still some notable things. The opening shot of the film, well, not the very first shot, but one of the early shots of the film is a POV of who we know is the eventual killer, inside the house, but we see from his point of view as he's looking around at everything in the house. And of course, John Carpenter's Halloween opens the exact same way, with a point of view of who we find out to be a killer. There's lots of subtle little touches that the film is relatively bloodless, which we'll get into a little bit, even though it is very, very scary. So yeah, there's lots of little similarities between Halloween and Black Christmas, and there's even some contention. I mean, I give it to Halloween. I'm a bigger fan of Halloween than I am of Black Christmas, but there's some contention among slasher fans as to which is the more appropriate film to champion for starting the slasher genre, either Halloween or Black Christmas. And of course, I'm in the Halloween camp because I love Halloween, but that's that.
Are you
Oh, I forgot to mention, did you know that Bob Clark... Sorry, yes, I'm done.
He also started the Clark Bar.
I don't know.
Bob Clark directed Lois Lane. Clark Kent, Clark and Lois.
Wow, there it is.
Yeah, there it is. Lois and Clark. Hey, can we do likes, dislikes? Because
let's do that.
It's going to be like a 3-hour conversation, and it's a good movie, but damn.
Yes, let's do that. Let's do that.
All right.
Let's go to
So,
likes, dislikes.
okay. I just wrote Mrs. Mack is the worst. She reminds me of a less classy Annie Wilkes. Which is saying something.
Sure. A less classy Eddie Wilkes. I understand.
When Jess tells the boyfriend, I want to talk face to face, I just wrote this famous last words of the relationship. It's like,
yeah.
I mean, come on. We went to college, and though you and I didn't have those phone calls between us as to each other, because here we are still.
Oh my god.
You know, just remembering those days. Good Lord. You know what? My life is so like jam packed these days, but I still don't know that I would trade how just bat insane it is for you'll beat me out, for the days in college of being like, hey.
Oh yes. Yes.
Oh, listen, we just really need to talk in person. Like,
yes,
what?
Yes.
No, oh my God. I don't look forward to watching my children go through that.
Nope.
Anyway,
nope,
so that's a whole thing. Margot Kidder, Lois Lane got a kid drunk.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
That's not right.
There's a lot of taboos in this film. I don't think this film would be made the same way today. Like there's quite a few little racy taboos, not the least of which is old Psycho in the House's language on the phone call. Like, dear Lord.
We're not as scared as yet.
That's true.
I'm not wrong, right? The cop is Nancy's dad from Nightmare on Elm Street,
you're not
which
wrong.
he's also a cop.
Yep. John Saxon he's also in Nancy's 10 years later played Nancy's dad in Nightmare on Elm Street. That's exactly right.
Is typecasting.
Yes. That's all he could do. That's not true.
I wrote Peter wrecking the piano with a mic stand is just not very rock and roll.
I don't like Peter. Like, while we're on likes, dislikes, I don't like Peter, like, at all. Like,
why would you?
No, he's a terrible character. Terrible person, terrible, awful, everything.
Now, I did like about Peter that, at least script-wise, I liked the subversion of him being an artist.
Because, yeah.
And why I say that is when Jess is talking about him early in the film, she makes some reference to him having been practicing for 4 days. I don't know. Maybe it's my, inferiority complex of being an artist most of my life. Of like, I presumed he was going to be a jock of some kind.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah.
And so when they show him playing the piano, I was like, look. But then they showed the piano player like breaking crap and like being a potential harasser / almost murderer.
Uncultured swine.
Yeah. Don't say it.
Well,
quick.
I find it. I mean, it's a bit on the nose in terms of like cheap comedy, but I do find the cop's ignorance of the word. I'm reluctant to say the word, but so he's asking for an address, and
what word, Reed?
Fine. So the word is fellatio, and I know, right? Junior high school, but Margot Kidder gives him the extension and says it's fellatio, and he is oblivious to what that word means, and so yeah, I found that pretty funny, pretty comical.
Me too.
Yeah.
So
I'm a junior high school child.
No, that's next week's movie. So this could be in scares. Actually, some of my latter, I'll bump those into scares.
Okay.
And I'll leave in likes, dislikes. I love an unmotivated killer.
Right.
I love an ambiguous ending. I love that this is just sort of, it is.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. That's one of the big. That's one of the big, noteworthy, praiseworthy things about this film is it does not let you off the hook with cheap, easy explanations. Neither in its ending or in its reveal. Like, spoiler alert to anybody who hasn't seen the film. Like, they never reveal not only why the killer's doing it, but who the killer is. Like, they never reveal it, like, at all. And yet the film somehow still has something of a closure.
Well, and you never even
satisfying.
It's not that you just don't know the identity of the character. It's you never see a physical, like, you don't see a face, you don't see a full body shot or anything.
You see one eye at one point, and that's it. It's just it's terribly creepy. Speaking of creepy, though, like, I love the musical score, if you could even call it that. It's almost like an occasional pulse, the series of low, dull, like, tones. But I thought they're so effective. This film just had, and you mentioned it earlier about how it kind of draws you in. It just has an unnerving quality. But I say that as a compliment. Like, it really is good at affecting a sense of dread in you in a way that I think even more recent films or more films from more experienced directors can't quite accomplish. Like, it's really a very effective little horror thriller.
Do you feel like getting into scares?
We might as well, especially on that. Let's go ahead.
So I've got a lot of little kind of bullet point scares, but there's two that I just bumped down into this. One is, and so again, we reference the summary. Well, at the end, Peter, the artist, starts sort of stalking Jess, the girlfriend, and the cops think he is the killer.
Yeah.
Well, it cuts away from him stalking / harassing her to the cops on the chase. Well, when it cuts back, he's been murdered and is in her arms, and now she's in shock. Well, I just love that scene because now, I'm no medical doctor, but is it realistic that she's incapacitated to the point of being unable to speak? I don't know, but I love narratively that we, the audience, knows that she knows that Peter did not do this, but they are all assuming he did, and that she got the better of him, but she can't convey that because she's in shock. It's just a really, really creepy moment.
Oh, very much so. Very much. And I love, like, on that, and this would be my scares, like, I love the film ending with only the sound of the ringing telephone, no musical cue. It's a really strong choice. It's a kind of a bold choice, and it's really very, very effective. Super creepy. It just, ends with her incapacitated, passed out, them thinking like, oh, let her get a rest. Like, it's like, and she's...
Read that. We've watched a lot of movies on the fear of God, and it might be a top 10 scariest moment for me. So you as the audience member know this killer is still in this house.
Mm-hmm.
And the cops show up, find the dead Peter, and get him out of there or whatever, put her in bed in one of these sorority house bedrooms, and they show so much care and attention to her once she's discovered. And then everyone walks out and turns off the lights, ostensibly, so she can rest. But you, the audience member, know this killer is still in this house.
Oh,
and
it's terrifying.
So freaky.
Yeah, it's terrifying, and rightfully so. And it will never happen. We'll never get a sequel to this. Like, that is where this story completely and fully ends. Like, period. You just have to decide for yourself and for your own imagination, horrified and traumatized as it is, what happened after that. But I think that is a really bold and very, very effective way to end the story. I have a couple here, and a lot of them are just related to the deaths. I will say So many of the deaths are just jarring. Claire's death with the plastic bag over the head. Oh my gosh, that's just really upsetting.
Did you know, we talked about the ambiguous ending. Did you know that the studio for the American release, Warner Brothers, wanted them to make Chris, Claire's boyfriend, appear at the end in front of Jess and say the line, "Agnes, don't tell them what we did."
Oh,
which is
right.
that the phone calls say. But Bob Clark, who also directed A Christmas Story, I don't know if you know that. He directed A Christmas Story.
I had not heard that. That's great. That's crazy.
It's crazy bit of information. Small world. He insisted on keeping the ambiguous ending. Which is a smarter choice.
No, it's absolutely a better choice. Yeah, I think it would cheapen this film to know who and why, who is doing it and why. I think would dramatically cheapen it. Of course, Barb's death, Margot Kidder, her death is really rough given just the flashes of the breaking glass figurines and the camera movements specifically. The camera movements are very assaultive themselves. But one of the things that I wanted to note, we're mentioning like the deaths are a little jarring and everything, but I mentioned earlier this is a relatively bloodless film. Did you take note of the fact that most of the deaths happen off screen? Like there are a couple of exceptions, but most of them take place, and in that sense, the film is not terribly violent. You see aftermath and a bit of gore and fright and stuff like that, but most of the deaths take place off screen.
Well, it's funny you said that because though no death has happened yet at this point early in the film that I'm about to reference, the movie has such a kind of like sorority kind of quality to it. I don't know why. I'm just joking there, but it's very light in the front end. Well, once that first phone call comes in, it's so unnerving. Like it takes what has a feel of like just a college age, a collegiate kind of like it hasn't dipped into horror yet, so it's kind of just operating on this surface level. And then that phone call happens, and that phone call is so unsettling and disturbing and perverse and just wretched that even you as the viewer are like, okay, well, this is what this is. You know, I mean, it really alters the tone rather dramatically.
In a film where there's like 8 people get killed, the most graphic and disturbing thing about it is the language used on those phone calls. Like it is. And so, listeners be warned.
Well, you reference sound design. It's not even so much the literal verbiage, although that is perverse and just disturbing. It's the cacophony. It's the sound design inherent to those phone calls.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and the sounds and the way that he flips back and forth into different voices and is clearly a very, mentally deranged and disturbed individual. Yeah, the phone call is terribly, terribly upsetting. I did love so 2 more things. I did love like when Mrs. Mack finds Claire's body. So it shot just that far shot in the corner, which I think was one of the movie posters. One of the movie posters was this image of Claire sort of in the rocking chair with a bag over her head off in the distance. So Mrs. Mack sees that, only to turn right around and get like big hook coming at her face, which is going to take her out. But then my last one that I was going to mention was just the big reveal, which still gives me chills whenever I think about it. The big reveal that the killer is inside the house, and then right after they say that, it pans up to the dead police officer. So like they reveal that the killer's inside the house, which we've already known, but they reveal that, and then it pans up to show that he has also taken out the most immediate line of defense. Yeah,
the one who is keeping watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I mean, I thought that shot was fantastic, absolutely fantastic, and it's the 1-2 reveal.
Yeah, well, and what's great about that is it's not hard and doesn't take long for you to realize the killer is in the house and that's the movie. I mean, like
right.
It's not like you get to the climax of some horror film and it's like, oh my God, he's really in there with you, but he hasn't been the whole time. It's been there the whole time, and that's terrifying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That kind of concludes my scares list. Did you have anything else?
I just wrote creepy ass phone calls.
Yeah.
All the phone calls are creepy.
Yes. Oh my gosh, though. Like, I said I was done.
I thought you were about to be silly. I thought you were gonna be like, oh my gosh, those phone calls too.
And the phone calls. So, but no, when Jess is running away, like after she sees him, and when she's running away, and he like starts coming down after her, but like clutches her hair and stuff like that.
I jumped.
Oh
I
my
jumped.
Gosh, there's just and that's the thing is like
I stopped Amazon shopping probably
That's
about
the
there.
moment.
I was like, oh god.
But it's like, yeah, there's so many really effective, subtle, like fright touches. Yes, there are a couple of jump scares, but just effective filmmaking, effective, scary filmmaking. So if you've never seen this film, and if you're looking for something, and I know we're kind of spoiling a lot of major beats, but if you're looking for something that's genuinely going to give you some chills and some fright factor, I would posit that this film has the capability, even 40-some years later, has the capabilities right up along some of the most effective modern horror sensibilities to really just unsettle and unnerve you. It's a very, very effective thriller and still holds up really well in that regard. So yeah, I definitely recommend checking the film out. I will say, yeah, go ahead.
No.
I was just going to mention in passing. I actually meant to mention this in likes dislikes. I'm not going to say too much about this, kind of for obvious reasons, but I think it was probably pretty gutsy at the time. Not being a child of the 70s, I don't really know, but I think it was probably pretty gutsy at the time that the main character of this film is pregnant and wants to terminate the pregnancy. And the fact that it was such a big deal in terms of like the conflict of her relationship and everything like that is just, again, just as a point of reference. I thought that was. I remember noting in the film, I was like, I bet that was a pretty bold choice for that time frame to include that plot line in there. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe that was something that was, relatively commonplace in terms of discussion topics.
Well, what's funny about you saying that, and of course her being pregnant, her having an interest in getting an abortion, that is why, listener, we've referenced the boyfriend. That's why he kind of starts stalking her at the end, is he doesn't want her to.
Yeah.
And It is interesting to me now hearing you bring up that narrative point. They don't do anything with it by the end.
No.
So
other than tension between them, that's it.
Right. And so I don't know. It's just kind of interesting to me. Like, clearly that's more, at least in terms of the structure of the story, more just kind of plot to get the two of them at odds by the end. Because it really, it's not even mentioned at all by the end of the film.
No, but the film has been hailed, from what I understand, as like a sort of a very feminist sort of piece, because obviously the sorority girls, there's a lot of discussion about their own sort of empowerment as individuals, and the way that Barb is very comfortable with her sexuality and with sort of sexual language and such, and then that plot line where Jess wants to terminate the pregnancy and everything. So I think over time, although this was not something ideologically or by experience that I'd be able to speak to, I think it has been hailed as kind of like a very feminist film, or like a female empowerment kind of film, which is ironic given that it's about a man who is stalking and killing women for some bizarre reason. But anyway, yeah.
Is that your theme?
No, I don't.
No, it's just...
I mean, if I were to go into theme, that would probably be something along those lines. But what do you have to say? What'd you get from this movie?
Are you meaning in themes?
Yeah.
Don't answer the door for Christmas carolers.
Yeah, don't do that. Nope.
I think.
Well, bye, everybody.
That's it. Have a Black Christmas. No, we don't have to spend a ton of time here because it's a bit repacking some stuff we've talked about before, but it is always interesting to revisit some of these things because this topic comes up a lot in horror movies, and it comes up a lot in the lived world that we occupy. The search party late in the film that show up because they're hunting for Peter, they knock on the sorority house door. Jess, and there's one other character at that point, I can't remember who it is, answer it, and they have this exchange. Well, the search party, one of the gentlemen in it says, keep your doors and windows locked and you'll be safe.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this whole idolatry of safety thing we could go down here, but I think in general, I just would love to, kind of bounce back and forth some thoughts here of like, this movie, why it's effective. Michael Myers is an effective killer in Halloween, but the bulk of Michael Myers' activity happens, or at least 50% of it happens outdoors. It's not location specific.
Sure.
Well, let's reframe this a little bit.
Well, Haddonfield,
why Halloween works on a scare level is it's about your neighborhood. And it's, hey, you suburban dweller who fled from the city life to have, a quiet place where the kids can grow up, and your 2.5 kids and your cars and your commutes, what have you. Well, hey, the threat can come to you as well. Well, Black Christmas is almost, let's make that even more granular. Hey, you in your house. Threat will come find you anywhere. Right. And that, I don't actually say that to be ominous and whatever. I just think, but it exists that behind this real thin membrane in your psyche is this Lovecraftian onslaught of sort of fears that kind of threaten to overtake you on any given moment of any given day. You know what I mean? It takes sort of ignoring what can happen in the world to be able to just kind of go through your day some days.
Sure. Right.
Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, no, it does.
I know we've been inane, but I'm trying to figure out how to convey a serious thought here of there's so many bad things, both random and intentional, that can happen to you and your loved ones. You take something like Black Christmas, which is basically saying, hey, this place of warmth and friendship and kind of and love and expression, not just are you constantly under threat there from the beginning of the film to the end. This isn't like something enters the story. It's there the whole time. So not just is it constantly there, but you can't identify it either.
Right.
It's kind of both literal and existential. And I think as people of faith, I really don't have any of these notes written down right now, so I'm just kind of freestyling here. But
yeah.
I think as people of faith, I empathize. I think it takes a great deal of work internally over a long span and season of time to operate whole and cognizant of the reality of threat that exists around you at any given moment, but to not succumb to the sort of nihilistic death march that you could call it, and to instead embrace the beauty in that really terribly broken zeitgeist. Does that make any sense whatsoever?
It does. But so what's interesting about where I thought you pivoted to a place that I wasn't expecting you to go, which is fine. It's great.
I always like to keep you on your toes.
You do.
Like a stalker in your attic.
You sure do. You sure do. Where I thought you were going to go was one of the things that I think is interesting when you talk about lock your doors and keep your windows shut and you'll be safe. Well, the first place my mind went was, but the danger's inside. The danger's not out there. And so kind of where I thought you were going is not only just about, and not that you didn't allude to this, but not just about addressing and confronting the fearful nature in which you navigate the external world, but locking your doors and closing yourself off, that sort of isolated approach to the threat of what's outside only leaves you more susceptible to the threats inside that you're not addressing, and in many cases are not really aware of, if you want to say that.
Yes, and I think the only tweak I would make because I would say all that you maybe thought I was aiming for was probably there. I just was following a brain train and it led me random places. But I think what's noteworthy about Black Christmas, and I'm only, as we continue talking, learning to articulate it better, isn't that, like what you just said, okay, you wall yourself off, you isolate yourself. What makes Black Christmas frightening is even when you aren't actively, like, you and I would look at someone who isolates themselves and say, hey, that's unhealthy. These are just people occupying the space in which they live.
Right. Oh yeah.
Like
yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
They didn't pursue that as sanctuary, as safety from danger. They just presume a safety because it's where they live.
Right.
I'll give him some shout outs here. Blake Collier posted I don't know, a month ago, an article he wrote about the Strangers. I think it was his article. Am I right about that? Yeah.
Yeah. I think so.
But in it, he talks about the kind of dreadfulness of the Strangers is about just threat finding you in your home. And I'm being very reductive, Blake. Apologies if there was much more robust conversation in that. That's what I recall of it. But it really struck me because it was like, yeah, we have this natural presumption, that your home is a safe place, and you watch a movie like Black Christmas or even The Strangers, which is very similar. I mean, it's an unidentifiable. You never, the identity is obscured, but it is out to get you, and it's in your domicile. Anyway, like I guess I don't want to leave that bow completely untied, but I think all I would sort of resolve that with is simply, it takes work. This may seem like a really weird connecting point to make here, but I mentioned that Ta-Nehisi Coates interview, and he talks about being off Twitter, and I referenced on one of our, maybe The Birds or maybe the one that was before it, Stranger on a Train, the Richard Rohr stuff about not needing to know everything. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
I just think I'll speak for me. Generally speaking, in my life, especially of the last 5 to 10 years, I think I have given myself, this is good. This is self-intervention, Reed. I think perhaps I've given myself more credit than I should in the spirit of thinking I can hold it all.
Mm-hmm.
And where I'm going with this and how I'm tying these things together is like the Coates thing or like the Rohr thing. It's, these days, it's not a man in our attic stalking us. It's billions of voices screaming from our pocket that is in our home with us, that's at our bedside table with us, that's in our bathroom with us. Like, we take the world in our pocket everywhere, and it threatens our health. And if it takes enough root, it threatens our safety and well-being and those around us. Anyway, I don't mean it to seem like a tangent. I'm just trying to draw a parallel between how do we cope when the threat is always present.
Yeah,
you cope,
right.
You figure out some freaking positive self-care, be it prayer, be it meditation, be it community, be it silence, be it maybe to the point of completely shutting off social media, unplugging from those. At the very least, it's regulating that. You have to do these things, or else you may not be literally, physically, biologically murdered by these things, but you will be psychologically eroded by them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just kind of spouting off.
Well, and so your conversation has brought up an interesting. So I kind of had a different place to go, scripture wise for this episode, but I think what you've brought up is something really critical. You asked a question just a second ago. You said, how do we cope? With the anxieties, with the sort of the threat. We carry the world in our pocket, and it threatens at every turn to kind of undermine our goodwill, our hope, our peace, our capacity to see the world in a right manner, as it were. And it actually made me think of 2 Corinthians, where Paul was talking, and I pulled it up real quick. It is a very long passage of Scripture. I'm not going to read it all. I'm just going to read a couple of key highlights from it. But basically, Paul is talking about his own degree of struggling with being amidst the constant threat of suffering. So I want to read just a couple of verses here, and then I'll say something that your conversation has made me think. So 2 Corinthians chapter 11,
Paul is rattling off this huge list of things. Verse 25, he says, 3 times I was beaten with rods, once I was pelted with stones, 3 times I was shipwrecked, I spent a night and a day in the open sea, I have been constantly on the move, I have been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from my fellow Jews, in danger from Gentiles, in danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea, and in danger from false believers. I have labored and toiled and have often gone without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst and have gone without food. I have been cold and naked, and besides everything else, I face the daily pressure of my concern for all the churches. So that's through verse 28. But then he says something that I think is key, and this is the takeaway that I'm sort of drawing out from this conversation as we think about these sort of anxieties coming out of Black Christmas. He says, if I must boast, I will boast of the things that show my weakness. And then he goes on to a few more things, but in verse 12, he tells this story about how there was an element, we don't know what it was, he calls it this thorn in his flesh, but there was some element, some unknown element that was really oppressing him, and he begged God to get rid of it. But God said to him in 2 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 9, he said, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. And then Paul says, therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, in verse 10, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Now, thinking about the context of what we are thinking about, we've talked before on this show about the idolatry of safety. Lock your doors, lock your windows, and you'll be safe. I mentioned a second ago, you and I somewhat approaching it from different points of view, but I mentioned a second ago how about, that ending. They leave her in the house thinking, well, now she can get some rest, but they've actually just abandoned her to the threat still, and they've left her there. And I think that one of the ways, this is going to sound a bit contrary, but we have a tendency to want to shore up and strengthen where we are weak. And we want to, basically say like, oh, I am, I've got to get rid of this weakness. I've got to, there's an old saying when you're working out, pain is just weakness leaving the body. That's what they, that's one of the sort of mantras to keep you going in working out or in exercising or something like that. Exercising is good for you. But my point being, I wonder if there is a path to wholeness that would say, no. In your weakness, you are actually there's strength in weakness. That an embrace of weakness, an embrace of recognizing your own frailties, and maybe it's a matter of wisdom. It's a matter of just knowing, like, hey, there's as much that I'm in danger of inside my own. To get back to Black Christmas, there's as much that I'm in danger of inside my house as there is outside of my house. There's as much, not, distrusting your own family or anything like that, but just monitoring your heart, knowing what's in your heart and your mind, your motivations. I'm as much a threat to myself as I am threatened by anything that I would be fearful of in the world around me, and I think that's something that we really struggle with in this country, in this time, in this climate, where we are constantly pushing suspicious threats to everybody else, instead of sort of examining our own selves. And at the very least, like, we don't embrace frailty and we don't embrace weakness. And I'll even go one step further than the scriptures specifically and explicitly state. There may be an occasion where we might have to embrace threat. There may be an occasion where this is going to sound really weird, but there may be an occasion where you have to let the thing you're afraid of in for a little bit. And I don't even know that we advocate on the show and have done so frequently. We don't advocate living recklessly. I think wisdom and discernment are required. But there may be times at which it's not simply a matter of locking your doors and bolting your windows and keeping everything out, or of keeping everything safe and protected. Paul was whatever it was that was causing Paul to struggle and was causing him to feel inferior and causing him to feel weak and less than, the Lord, about that specific moment, whatever it was, said, listen, my grace has got you covered. My grace has got you covered, and in that weakness, then you are all the stronger for it. And it's scandalous for us to realize that sometimes, maybe by sharing the burden in community, maybe by just being honest about it and being truthful, maybe about just resisting the temptation to deny that it's there, maybe simply by being honest and open about it, we bring it out into the light, and maybe that is strength. Maybe that is, we've talked about. I am reminded of the Babadook, the neighbor in the Babadook, which we haven't mentioned the Babadook in a long time. But there's a neighbor in the Babadook who's struggling with Parkinson's, and she's arguably the most whole and strong character in the entire film. And her body is very weak and frail. But when she's asked about it, she says, "No, he wants to talk about it, and so we talk about it." And the maturity and the wisdom there. And I feel like we are in a country and we are in a condition of time that wants to sanitize the Instagram posts, that wants to put everything in sort of this glossy veneer, wants to pretend that we don't have the weaknesses that we do very much have. And I don't know, there's this, I'm not putting perhaps the best or cleanest words to it, but there's a sense in which I feel like we are simply saying, nope, I'm good. I'm going to just lock my doors and stay in here and get some rest, not realizing that we've trapped ourselves with the danger, which will eventually get the better of us. And I don't know, there's an insanity at play that we need to be very willing to confront, and at the very least be willing to acknowledge and accept. And we just aren't. We're just not great at acknowledging and accepting the times where we're crazy and the times where we're vile and the times where we're, a listener of the show. I'm not going to intentionally derail us into some big political conversation, but listener of the show, Eric Skwazinski, had posted something, and I won't tell the specifics of his post simply because I'm not sure if he would want me to, and second of all, I don't want to divert us too much. But he basically said, it is possible for two things to be wrong at the same time. Like, you're worried about this thing that you're calling illegal, but you're also doing something rather heinous in response to it, and it is possible for both of those things to be wrong. You are not justified in doing something heinous to combat something that you consider illegal or immoral. Two wrongs, essentially, do not make a right. And I feel like we get so hung up on the dangers that we would identify externally out there, that we're giving no attention whatsoever to even the possibility of the dangers that are lurking in our attics or basements or closets or back rooms or whatever, analogy you want to use. In Black Christmas, it's the attic. But
right.
And so, yeah, I think to use the language that Paul specified, I mean, like, maybe some time to not boast in terms of be proud of things. I think there's a difference between, in using Paul's analogy, I don't think it means boasting like, yeah, like I did that thing. What of it? Say something. I think it's more a matter. I think it's more a matter of accepting, like, hey, I'm not going to run around pretending that I'm perfect. I'm not going to run around pretending that I've got my act together. But man, so many Christians, so many public figures, so many politicians. America, the United States of America, runs around like, yeah, we got our act together. What of it? And it's like, oh my gosh, we have got to come to a place to where we are willing to at least take a beat and say, there's some stuff going on that we've got to acknowledge is there, or it's eventually gonna throw a bag over our head or a hook in our face, or it's gonna get us. It's gonna kill us.
All we wanted was the sherry out of the back of the toilet.
That's all we wanted to do. So I hope I didn't utterly derail kind of where you were going.
No, I mean I do think that's part of the impact of this film is it poses the notion of a formidable threat that's difficult to wrestle down because we don't know how to identify it, but we know it's present and proximal to us. You know what I mean? Like,
right? Yeah, absolutely.
That
yeah.
I think is kind of why. So no, I don't feel like you derailed anything other than just illustrated further how potent, why this film has lasted. And even though I had never heard of it before, you were like, Black Christmas.
Well,
I was like, okay.
Well, that having been said, do you think it's time to bring in our old good friend David S. Pumpkins?
It's never a bad time.
That's true. That is true. Okay, so we're gonna do something a little different here with David S. Pumpkins. Yeah, I'll throw you a curveball, Nathan Rouse. So
sports.
It's just a little. No, it's not David Sports Pumpkins. No,
you said a curveball. You said a curveball.
No, that's true. That's true.
I love how you use the sports lingo. I call it out, and you're like, no. This other thing, it's like it was right there. I handed you the joke, and wow,
you're right,
we are so sports ignorant. Sorry, everybody.
That is a verifiable fact. No, we're gonna add on something. We're just gonna you get extra sauce with your pizza. You get breadsticks. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add on something to David S. Pumpkins. We're gonna use the tried and true measurement. We are going to measure this film in style, scares, and substance.
Okay,
but at the end, we're going to throw something. We're going to throw something a little extra. But why don't we just go ahead and start with?
Is it going to be an ambiguous end?
It's going to be a little ambiguous, maybe.
Uh-oh.
We'll see. But no, so why don't we start with the old tried and true measurement? We're going to measure it in style, scares, and substance. So Nathan Rouse, 1974, Bob Clark, who also directed A Christmas Story, the Black Christmas film, what do you give it out of 5 for style?
I do love A Christmas Story. Especially the one pre-color. Style for Black Christmas. I think I'm going to land at a 3.5.
All right.
That was very considered, okay?
I understand.
Don't receive that as negative.
No, I understand. 3.5 is fair. I am going to up it just slightly and give it a 4.5. I think the biggest reason...
It's more than just slightly, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, so I'm going to up it a lot, and I'm going to go 4.5 because I think there's a power to it that still exists in terms of how scary and creepy and effective it is. So 4.5 for me for style. Now, that having been said, why don't I just go ahead and tilt my hand there for scares? I'm also going to give this 4.5. Very scary film, even 40-plus years on, so 4.5 for me.
For scares, I will join you at 4.5.
All right. It's very scary. Well, it made you put down Amazon. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
What would you give it for substance?
I think the unidentified killer, the more or less single location, and his presence there the entire time. I'm going to give it a 4.
All right.
What did I just say? What were we just doing? Substance or scares?
Substance, yeah.
No,
substance.
No. Yes. And I gave scares 4.5, right?
You sure did.
Okay, so I gave the right numerical. Sorry. I don't know. It's been a long day. I gave the right numeric. In the moment, I was like, oh, God, did I just answer scares again? So, no, a 4 on substance, because I think those elements, that's what I was going for. Those elements create a very unique and interesting thematic baseline.
All right. Well, I am going to join you in your 4 for substance.
You're such a copycat.
I am a little bit. So for many of the same reasons that you already cited, I'm going to join you in your 4. And that means that in our traditional David S. Pumpkins measurement, we give it an 8.
I was going to say, that's not a 7. That was...
No.
Those are some strong numbers.
Absolutely. We give it an 8 out of 10. David S. Pumpkins. Very strong showing for 1974's Black Christmas. But I wanted to add another element to it. I'll explain this in brief. Basically, we like the theme of the alliteration of S because it's David S. Pumpkins. So style, scares, substance. We're also going to add summary. So here's what I'm going to ask. I'm going to lead, and then I'm going to ask you to think about this.
Like it's the summer? Like it's...
Yeah, it's like summery. Not springy.
Like, right.
It's summery.
Like wintry or summery.
Right, exactly.
Okay, cool.
So summary.
I'll think about that.
So what we're going to do is, in addition to the average numeric that we normally give for David S. Pumpkins, Nathan and I are each going to give you an individual measurement that we just give. What would we give this film out of 10? Just as an individual, yeah. So what would we give this film out of 10 as an individual? And then give like a 1 sentence about who, if anybody, you would recommend this film for. So for me, I'll go first to sort of provide a template for my thoughts here. So I would personally give Black Christmas an 8 out of 10. I think it is an incredibly solid slasher, and I would recommend it as essential viewing for any fan of the slasher subgenre. If you like slashers and have not yet made it to Black Christmas, you need to seek it out and watch it as soon as possible because it is essential viewing for slasher fans. I'm not sure if people who are not fans of the slasher genre would really find much. They might find it a bit disturbing or upsetting, but it is essential viewing for fans of slasher films. So what would you give it for a general summary score, and then who would you recommend it for if you would?
Out of 10, huh? This is you
Yeah.
just like throw me for a loop here.
I sure do.
My summary numeric value for Black Christmas, as measured by my knowledge and expectations going in versus my experience coming out. You gave it an 8?
I gave it an 8. 8 out of 10.
I mean, is it just crappy to give it a 7? Because
No,
that's like
no.
our number. It's the number.
It's
of
your
perfection.
number. This is the number you own. Yeah, no, this is the number you own. So yeah, you're fine.
I'm just okay, fine. I'll give it a 7. I think it could merit an 8, but then I look like I'm copying you.
Which you can do.
I'm overthinking the summary, but
You really are.
I would highly recommend this movie to either, well, not either, but to just fans of A Christmas Story who want to watch all of Bob Clark's oeuvre.
Over.
So yeah,
Wow.
that's
Okay,
That's
all
my
right.
summary.
All right. Well, that concludes the the first rendition of. Wow, that was really sloppy. Hopefully, we get better at that. So, David Sloppy Pumpkins. That's hopefully going to be a little bit better as we move forward. So, but that concludes the first installment of our hashtag What the Dickens.
What the Dickens?
of this year's Christmas installment. So that was Black Christmas, 1974, directed by Bob Clark. And next week, we are going to be going to the Christmas Horror Present, and our representative for that is going to be the 2017 film Better Watch Out, directed by Chris Peckover. Seek that film out. I believe you can find it on the Shudder streaming service, where you can also find Black Christmas. And I think it's also rentable through iTunes. So check that film out, and then we'll see you back here next week. Nathan, thank you so much
Merry
for watching this
Christmas.
film. Merry Christmas, buddy, and for having this conversation with me. I really, really, really appreciate it.
You are so welcome.
Now, don't tell anybody what we did, and I'll see you next week.
Okay.
The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, but not the end of the conversation. And you can continue the conversation in a variety of ways. You can follow us on Twitter @TheFearOfGod. You can like and follow us on Facebook or join the Facebook Fear of God discussion group. You can follow us on Instagram @FearOfGodPodcast. Go to morethanonelesson.com for show notes or to leave a comment on this post or any of the other official episode posts. Email us at fearofgodpodcast@gmail.com. And last but not least, if you listen to us through iTunes, we would greatly appreciate a rating or review. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.
What did we do? I don't get that part.
That's what he says in the movie. Don't tell anybody what we did.
Oh, okay.
Hi, everybody.